Good morning. It is February 19th day, 2025. Welcome to the Morning Momentum. I am your host, Alfonsoh Ouma, and this is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. The hashtag is the Morning Momentum at Younib Media TV at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories on the Daily Nation this morning on the front page. Playing with fire. Now, this is about diplomacy. Warring group accused of massacres has been sanctioned by the US. In case you're wondering, we are talking about the South Sudan. Now, dangerous territory. Kenya's credentials as a regional arbiter and peacemaker could be eroded as one of the Sudanese fighting factions. The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF prepares to launch a parallel government in Nairobi on Friday. President William Ruto has previously rolled out the red carpet for the group's leader, General Mohammed Hamdan Hemeti Dagalo, angering the junta in Khartoum. That story is beefed up for you on page 1, page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 3, man gets 150 years in jail for strangling his 3 children. That story is also beefed up for you on the Daily Nation this morning. On page 7, PM talk. Raila keeps Kenyans gazing on his next move. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has declined to be drawn into discussion on constitutional amendment to appoint him prime minister, even as his loss in the race for African Union Commission chairmanship raised the prospects of his return to active local politics. That one is on page 7. On page 18, in matters security this morning, fake ID card, Shabab suspects and abduction bid on foreign workers. Now, police are holding 2 suspects linked to an alleged planned abduction of foreigners working on a state project in Mandera East. That story is beefed up for you on page 18. On the cover page this morning, revealed cost of keeping a student in secondary school for a day. We'll take a look at that. Let's get up close and candid with the Daily Nation on page 2. MP championed unity education. Now, his death at a Nairobi hospital occurred just a day after that of his elder brother. Residents of Malava constituency say their lawmaker, who died on Monday, improved infrastructure in many schools. That story is beefed up for you on page 2. Let's take a look at page 3. 150 years behind bars for Bomet man who killed his 3 children. Even with the denials, the evidence against Bernard Kirui Kipkemoi is overwhelming. Bernard Kipkemoi received a 50-year prison sentence for every child that he killed that night. Also on page 3, driver dismissed for love affair with the trader CU's World Vision. Now, relief group World Vision Kenya and one of its former drivers are embroiled in a court tussle over the organization's policy that regulates employees' love relationships. Mr. Dominic Mulavu says the World Vision's policy manual on child and adult safeguarding is unconstitutional as it criminalizes consensual relationship between staff and adult community members. That story is beefed up for you on page 3. Let's move on and take a look at page 4. Sudan's RSF to launch government in Nairobi. Now, Tshisekedi views Ruto as leaning towards Rwanda, a country accused by the United Nations and humanitarian agencies of backing M23 rebels. The gains made could be eroded with the turn of events in Nairobi coming just days after the RSF was accused by a lawyer's lobby of killing more than 400 people. Now, Kenya's credentials as a regional arbiter and peacemaker could be eroded as one of the Sudanese fighting factions, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF, prepares to launch a parallel government in Nairobi on Friday. The RSF leadership, including its commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, arrived in Nairobi on Sunday to launch a quote-unquote peace and unity government. The initial date was Monday, but the event was marred by confusion, ending with deferment to Friday. Now, you'll catch up with more of those insights on page 4 and page 5. Also on page 5 this morning, security, education, healthcare winners in Treasury's 86 billion shillings budget boost. Now, allocations to the education, security, and healthcare have been increased with cuts to water, housing, and energy in spending adjustments that have expanded the budget size for the current financial year by 85.8 billion shillings. Now, on page 10 this morning, why KRA 35 million shillings tax win against UN staffer spells troubles for many. Now, one is required to file an appeal against KRA's objection decision within 14 days. Doctor failed to show that the properties were acquired from the salary he received from the United Nations agency. Now, 35.9 million shillings is the amount in shillings demanded from the World Health Organization epidemiologist by the Kenya Revenue Authority, barely a year after the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs directed diplomatic institutions with Kenyan workers to facilitate docking of taxes from their salaries. Kenya Revenue Authority may have found a window to net additional levies from individuals who enjoyed pay-as-you-earn exemptions. In its battle with the top epidemiologist working for a United Nations agency, KRA demanded evidence that money used to acquire 4 properties was from the tax-exempt salary. Failure by Dr. Kibet Sergon to provide that evidence in the form of bank statements and other documents has seen KRA classify money used to acquire 4 pieces of land as taxable. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. Let's move on and take a look at page 12. Now, police team now wants loud noise banned during demos. National Police Service Commission presented views to State House. Amendments to Public Order Act will outlaw the use of vuvuzelas and whistling. Now, protesters will be barred from making noise, including blowing vuvuzelas, whistling, or blaring loud music during street protests if amendments to Public Order Act proposed by the National Police Service Commission are enforced. The Commission informed the National Assembly Committee on Administration and Internal Security during a presentation on the proposed demonstration bill 2024 that noise in any form should not be part of demonstrations. The Commission's legal director, James Nduna, told the committee that noise by demonstrators not only affects those participating in the demonstration, but also encourages other people to join the protesters. That story is beefed up for you on page 12. Let's shift gears and take a look at the expert opinion. Why Kenya's diplomatic fortunes are on a free fall. Now, Kenya has not been patient enough to fully appreciate all the underlying dimensions of the DRC conflict. Also on the expert opinion this morning, Raila's options after losing the AU race job. The AU election loss presents an opportunity for Mr. Odinga to reassess his role in Kenya's political landscape. The dust has settled on the African Union Commission elections, with Djibouti's foreign minister, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, emerging as the new chairperson. For Kenya's Raila Odinga, the loss marks the end of a high-stake bid that many had hoped would cap off his decades-long career in public service. Now, attention shifts to what comes next for the veteran politician whose influence in Kenya remains as strong as ever. You want to catch up with that on page 14. Now, let's take a look at the letter of the day, Constitution not tool for political rewards. The recent remarks by Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei advocating a constitutional amendment to create a prime ministerial opposition specifically for ODM leader Raila Odinga are not only alarming but also setting a dangerous precedent for Kenya's democracy. The Constitution, a product of hard-fought struggles, was designed to serve the people, not individual politicians. Amending it to reward a leader, however esteemed, undermines the principles of democracy and constitutionalism. Now, you want to catch up with more of that story on page 16. What do you think about this? Amending the Constitution just to create a position for a leader? Right. Let's move on to the DN2 motoring article this morning. Woes of unmarked speed bumps. Is there a hack to minimize the jolt? damage or loss of steering wheel control caused by surprise bump. For the motoring enthusiasts, you have that beefed up for you on the DN2 motoring article. Now, let's take a look at the world news this morning. US and Russia meet for talks on war in Ukraine. Now, Kremlin says talks may bring clarity on a possible Putin-Trump meeting. It remains unclear how European nations will engage Washington. Now, the United States and Russian officials met in Riyadh for their first talks on ending the war in Ukraine on Tuesday as Kyiv and its European allies watched from the sidelines anxiously. The talks in the Saudi capital underscored the rapid pace of US efforts to halt the conflict less than a month after President Donald Trump took office and 6 days after he spoke by phone to Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Ukraine and European leaders are worried that Trump could cut a hasty deal with Moscow that ignores their security interests, rewards Russia for the invasion, and leaves Putin free to threaten Ukraine or other countries. Do you want to catch up with that on page 20? Let's move on quickly to Addis Ababa. Leaders call for M23 withdrawal. Leaders at the 38th African Union Summit have called for the immediate withdrawal of M23 rebels from the eastern DR Congo. In a press conference on the sidelines of the summit in Ethiopia, AU Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security Bankole Adeoye said leaders called for the preservation and respect of sovereignty, political unity and territorial integrity of DR Congo. I quote him, "We clearly express concern and call for immediate withdrawal of M23 and their supporters from the occupied towns, including Goma," end of quote. Adeoye said that he noticed that the continental bloc is closely following the crisis and pushing forward effective implementation of the Luanda and Nairobi processes. That story on page 20. In Kampala, Uganda, traffic mop-up nets 850 drivers. Police in Uganda have arrested 856 drivers for various traffic crimes in the past 1 week, authorities say. The offenses include speeding and driving under the influence of alcohol, leading causes of road accidents in the country. Michael Kananura, spokesperson of the Directorate of Traffic and Road Safety, said the arrests were part of a nationwide operation from February 10th to 16th. Now, also Sudanese army reports advances in a fight against the RSF. The Sudanese armed forces say they have made advances in the fight against the paramilitary rapid support forces on different fronts. In Bahri, north of capital Khartoum, the army has taken full control of Kafuri, the last stronghold of the RSF in the city. Now, the capture of Kafuri marks a milestone for the armed forces in the campaign across the cities of Khartoum, Omdurman, and Bahri. Kafuri served as a stronghold of the RSF and a platform for launching artillery attacks on army-held areas in Omdurman. Now, the genesis is in 2023 when the war in Sudan erupted. Let's move on and take a look at business news now. State sinks 468 billion shillings loans into regular uses in breach. Instead of developments, cash went into salaries and other items. Expenditures are despite President Ruto's promise to use loans as prescribed by the law. At a glance, 57% proportion of the loans taken in the fiscal year that catered for expenses other than development projects. Now, also in business this morning, New Holland seeks new distributor after CMC exit. Farm equipment maker New Holland is in talks for a distributor to strengthen its presence in Kenya as its local distributor. CMC Motors Group gradually exits. The firm, whose product lines include agricultural tractors, combine harvesters, and hay bowlers, say it is taking a similar move in Uganda and Tanzania to ensure its business in the region is not impacted following the exit of CMC, its current official distributor. Briefly, in the education sector, KPC gives disabled students facilities and 11 million shillings of facelift. The Kenya Pipeline Company Foundation has invested 11 million shillings in educational infrastructure in Homa Bay and Nandi counties to benefit disabled students. Projects include a dormitory, classrooms, and renovations. KPC Foundation is not just about infrastructure, but about transforming lives. A well-equipped and safe school environment is key to academic success and personal development, said Raymond Omolo, Interior PS. That human interest story is beefed up for you on page 22. In the manufacturing industry, China Farm sets up hub in Syokimau. Now, the global Chinese construction equipment firm Liugong Machinery has set up an assembly base in Kenya to act as the hub for its East African operations. The offices in Syokimau, Machakos County, will serve as the regional business hub for Liugong Machinery East Africa, a subsidiary of the Liugong Group based in China. The firm manufactures construction equipment such as excavators, dozers, motor graders, air compressors, wheel loaders, forklifts, cranes, concrete mixers, and road rollers. So that is the end of business news. We go now to sporting action on the Daily Nation this morning. We start with rugby. Ntabeni Dukisa, South African star ready to fly Kenyan flag. He has embraced his adopted home, loves ugali and nyamachoma. The 36-year-old in line to feature for the national 15s team. All right, let's take a look at the Champions League. Ancelotti wary of Manchester City. Real Madrid manager Carlo Ancelotti brushed aside Pep Guardiola's claim that Manchester City have a quote-unquote 1% chance of beating the Spanish side today, saying that the defending European champions only hold a small advantage. Real came back to win 3-2 late on against City at the Etihad last week in the first leg of their Champions League playoff, but Ancelotti urged his side not to get ahead of themselves as they seek to seal at least a last 16 place in front of their own fans. Also in matters football, Much traveled hitman Makwata joins Bandari. Now, Bandari FC has strengthened its squad with 4 new signings, including former Much traveled Tanzanian Coastal Union FC striker John Mark Makwata, as it pushes to perform well in this season's Football Kenya Federation Premier League. All right, let's move on to page 30. Woman of all surfaces, Chepngetich ready to strike at Lobo Village. Reigning African champ Cynthia Chepngeno in the mix. Reigning African Games women's 10,000 meter champ also holds the Banjetani Mountain Run women's 14-kilometer title. In the FKF Premier League, timid Leopards attack as has coach Ambani worried as Sofapaka come calling. AFC Leopards coach Fred Ambani is unhappy with his strike force as the former multiple Kenyan champions host improving Sofapaka in a Football Kenya Federation Premier League match at Dandora Stadium in Nairobi today. Currently, Leopards have only 3 strikers after Rwandan forward Arthur Gitego was released by the club in the current transfer window. Sydney Lokale, Maxwell Otieno, and Brian Yahama are the forwards available to Ambani. That story is beefed up for you on page 30. Let's take a look at page 31. Confident Kibugu releases another shot. Now, this is all about golfing this year. However, I have prepared well, says young Kenyan professional. In the blast from the past, Joseph Ndungu, pioneer caddy who played in the 1969 Kenya Open. Joseph Ndungu stands upright, strong and jovial. Tomorrow, Muthaiga Golf Club will be his base as he joins a selected number of caddies who transitioned to become professional golfers and whose resilience formed the foundation of African players in the early years of independence. Ndungu, the 82-year-old, is still active as a trainer of golfers at Vetlab Golf Club, fit a fiddle, and regularly enjoys his round of golf. All right. Also on page 31, 8.2 million all-electric car prize for first hole in one play. A brand new all-electric vehicle, BYD Atto 3, worth 8.2 million shillings, will be at stake during this year's Magical Kenya for the first hole-in-one play. Speaking during the handover of the car to Ronald Meru, the commercial director of Kenya Open Golf Limited, Jennifer Kinyoe, the managing director of Logsi, said, "At Sifao Mobility and Logzea, we pride ourselves on innovation, sustainability, and a commitment to shaping a better, greener future. The BYD Atto 3 electric vehicle that is being handed over today is more than just a remarkable prize. It's a symbol of our dedication to creating a cleaner, more sustainable world, one step at a time," end of quote. So that is a prize attached to the first hole-in-one play winner at the Magical Opens. Now, on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning, the cost of keeping one child in a secondary school for a day. Now, according to data compiled by school managers, national schools spend 378 shillings daily on each learner. Heads of institutions say either the state or the parent must contribute more. Now, it costs school managers 378 shillings daily to keep one learner in a national school in Kenya. Those in extraordinary and extra county and county schools spend 358 shillings daily per learner, while day schools require at least 110 shillings. This is according to data compiled by the Kenya Secondary Schools Heads Association, which now states that either the government or the parent must contribute more, as the capitation and school fees they currently receive are insufficient to effective learning to take place. All right, you'll catch up with those statistics on the cover page of the Daily Nation. Also on the cover page this morning, rights groups demand release of Besigye, calls for protests. Now, human rights groups are demanding the immediate release of Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye, lawyer Aaron Kiiza, and Haji Obeid Lutale, while calling on the public to march to the Ugandan High Commission in Nairobi on Friday to submit to a petition for justice. On November 16th last year, Mr. Besigye and Mr. Lutale were reportedly abducted from Nairobi. They resurfaced on November 20th at a general court-martial in Kampala, Uganda, where they were charged with offenses related to security and unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition. Now, with that story of Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye, we come to the tail end of the morning momentum this morning, this 19th day of February 2024. Thank you so much for keeping us company here on the morning momentum and for choosing to watch the best youth television network in East and Central Africa, Younib TV. We appreciate your support and your time. By extension, our heartfelt gratitude goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. Behind the lens, Peter Ngituyu, and the chief controller this morning has been Peninah Wachera. See you on Friday, same time, same place. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. I have been your host, Alfonsoh Ouma.